Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zeta Perspective right here on Rebellious Ufology. I'm so happy to welcome you on today's show on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And we're now also on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spreaker, and Anchor FM. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, I do have a morning show right here on Rebellious Ufology that I'd love for you all to check out. Every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, I give you the UFO podcast daily lineup where I tell you who's on that day, what time they'll be on, and what they'll be talking about. And if you like what you see here today, consider joining the rebellion by hitting that subscribe button. And don't forget to ring the bell so you get notifications of all of our videos. We have brand new shows coming out all the time. And you can also follow me on Twitter, Rebellious UFO, and Instagram at Rebellious Ufology. Also, we are a show run completely by donations, which can be made on buymeacoffee.com. The link is in the description down below, and I always appreciate any donation you can give. So on this show, The Zeta Perspective, we'll be talking about all things with regards to experiencers. So whether you consider yourself an experiencer, a contactee, or an abductee, or even if you're just curious as to what it's all about, this is the place for you. We have Paul Hamden and Cyan joining us every week. They're both lifelong experiencers and have weekly, if not daily, ongoing contact with the Zetas. According to their website, The Zeta Connection, to which there is also a link in the description down below, they state, the Zetas are aware that they are misunderstood and have been misrepresented over the years. They'd encourage a person to take the time to reevaluate what they think they know and become acquainted with the information that they have given and proven themselves. And that's exactly what we're here to do in this show, look at the information and examine it from all perspectives to see if we can come to understand it better. This will be a weekly call-in show so that you can call in to speak with Paul and Cyan, who will be with me, like I said, every week to either answer your questions or you can just get their perspective on what you think the Zetas might say or think about something. And for those of you who don't want to be on camera, it's totally fine if you just join in on audio, or if you prefer, you can always ask your questions in the chat. And just a reminder before we start, if you do ask a question in the chat, please remember to type it in all caps so that I can see it easier. Also, if you know someone who might enjoy this conversation, please feel free to share the love, share the show so they too can join in with us. And if you're so inclined and would like to please the YouTube gods, give this show a like and comment down below. They love your comments, and so do I. Okay, guys, so with all of that, I think we're ready to start the show. Let me bring Paul and Cyan on, and we will get started. Hey, Paul and Cyan, how are you? Welcome back.
Good day.
How's everything going?
Good, really good.
Yeah, internet's working. Helps. We're doing better than last week.
We're already ahead. Yes. So we've got quite a few people here today already joining us. So amazing. Glad to see everyone here. So for those of you that were here in the morning show, Paul and Cyan were joining us in the chat, which was awesome. And we were talking about quite a few things, but we also were chatting and you guys came up with a couple of ideas of things we could talk about today. So as I said before, everyone, this is a call-in show. Actually, let me put the invite up here. So all you have to do is click on the link if you want to join in. And so what we were thinking to do, just kind of to let everyone know ahead of time, is to give everyone who wants a chance to talk. We'll bring you on if you want to come on. If you want to tell your story or get their opinion on something, please feel free to do so. If you have questions, we'll limit it to maybe like 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll move on to the next person so that everybody has time to talk. Because we all want to know what Paul and Cyan are thinking about things or what the Zetas are thinking. So let me get back to, okay, so one of the things we talked about today in the morning show, Paul, were some of your experiences, because we were talking about some UFOs that were filmed in Australia. And then I think that got us talking into orbs and such as well. But do you want to talk a little bit about some of your experiences that you've had?
Yeah. I don't know why, but Melbourne in Australia seems to be fairly prolific in regards to craft. And it seems that I think back in about 1975 to 77, that there seemed to be a few craft sightings as well. And I think, I'm not sure of the time or the date for that school sighting, but there was a school in Melbourne that had a fairly large craft sighting as well. But for myself, I had a craft come basically about 10 meters away from the window. And I mean, I know that sounds really close, but that's where the craft was. And I had my friends with me, and when they saw the craft as well, and then of course the beings showed themselves to us through the side wall of the craft. I mean, it was pretty a substantial sighting, and the craft was visible by anybody that was driving along. They could see the craft. The people that came into the unit where I was, they'd actually driven down the road and saw the craft, and they would have been at least 200 meters away from it, and they drove down and went under the end of the craft and then came up into the unit where I was. They were screaming and yelling, oh, there's aliens or something going on out there. But the thing is that if they could see it from 200 meters away, you've got to ask yourself, who else saw this craft? I think that there's a lot more going on with disclosure than people think. And I think a lot more people have seen craft than are willing to actually come forward and say something as well.
Yeah, I agree. So did you say that was the first craft you'd ever seen?
That I could consciously remember seeing, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd had from the outside. That's pretty funny.
Good point. With you guys, we've got to differentiate that. So how did that change your outlook on things?
Interestingly, I was given a Class C screen memory. And so when the craft left, because there were 4 of us that were watching this craft, we all stopped, turned around in sync, and walked into the lounge room and sat down and started watching the TV. And none of us spoke about the craft.
Yeah. That's not surprising, right? After we've talked with enough experiencers, as we all have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was talking to someone the other day that said that their husband was sitting next to them watching TV, and they were taken and then placed back, and the husband didn't even realise that they'd gone. That was the thing. So the partner was placed into a trance or into an altered state as well. Yeah.
There was that interview we watched with that older guy. Do you remember? And he had witnessed. He was with his school friend, his best friend, and a craft had come and pretty much like what Paul's describing, right up close and personal. And the kid he was with was in trance, and they didn't move, they didn't speak, they couldn't do anything because this craft was right there. It sounds really common.
Yeah,
they affect people like that. When
wasn't that on Preston Dennett's?
I've got a feeling it was Preston Dennett. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I've talked to people who say that they've noticed, like say they've been taken out of their bed or whatever, and their spouse has had that same type of thing. Like they just seem to be completely frozen and can't react at all, and are completely unaware of what's even going on, even if they're awake. Yeah. So
I was levitated above the bed.
Oh gosh!
In the middle of the night, spun around 90 degrees, or last thing I remember is moving towards the window. And my then partner at the time, I could hear him breathing underneath me as my hair was like falling down. He didn't move a muscle. He didn't stir, nothing, and you're sort of thinking, how can all this be going on? And the person next to you doesn't wake up. Like, how is that actually possible?
That's true. And you hear that too. Like people ask that, like, especially people that are newer to, kind of, recognizing their experiences. They'll be like, the house was full of people. Like my partner didn't wake up. My kids didn't wake. The dog didn't wake up. Nobody woke up. How does this even happen? So it must be some sort of technology, I'm assuming, that they can use to kind of, sedate everyone else, so to speak.
It's not hard though to put humans into an altered state. That's the thing. And
that's true.
You go to sleep every night. I mean, everybody does. But if I ask you how you go to sleep, you couldn't answer that question. You don't know where the trigger is that switches on to put you to sleep. And so if in understanding that we don't understand ourselves how we fall asleep, it wouldn't be hard to understand that extraterrestrials could put us into an altered state so that we wouldn't even remember what's going on.
Or
Yeah.
could it be we're in the compression in their
Yeah,
time frame?
could be compression. Yeah, sure.
That would
Interesting.
explain.
Interesting. Well, I mean, we know that like with hypnosis, we can do it to other humans. We may not know exactly. I'm sure they have a better understanding of how it works, but we're certainly capable of doing it ourselves as well. But
Yeah.
it's interesting how I'd be curious, like what, yeah, is it something time related? Is it some sort of technology that just kind of activates that part of our brain that sort of puts us to sleep? I don't know. It'd
Well,
be
if a person's being taken
mhm,
and they're moving from their sleep state, so they're in bed and they're taken out through the
yeah.
wall, then the physical body has to be shifted so they can actually move through the wall, or the wall's got to be shifted so the
Yeah.
physical body can move. Then, of course, the local construct, which is the mind, has to be increased in frequency so that they can actually have some sort of spatial awareness and cognitive awareness on craft.
Hmm.
And then once on craft, they then are probably given some sort of a type B screen narrative where they believe that something's happening, one thing, but actually something else is taking place.
Yeah.
It's actually, there's a lot to it when you start to talk about it and think about it. It's
Yeah.
not just one thing. There's multiple processes that are taking place. And then,
Mhm.
of course, once that finishes, the person has to be placed back into their physical environment. And you know what? The partner who was asleep wouldn't even know that the person was gone.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
And I think a lot of people would need to ask themselves, and here's that's sort of a litmus test. If you are having contact, uh, you should ask your partner how they slept that night, because if
Mhm.
you slept really badly and were taken or had contact, you probably asked your partner, how did you sleep? They probably slept like a rock all night.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, we
interesting.
find that a lot, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we've got something separate going on, because quite
Yeah.
often we go together, but if we've got something separate, either he'll be out cold or I'll be out cold the entire night, which is quite unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Interesting. Oh, that's a good idea. I never thought to ask that. You made me think of something too, though, and this is kind of unrelated, well, completely unrelated, but has to do with going up on craft. And we've talked about it a little bit, but I don't think we've talked about it on the show yet. And I just find it like a really fascinating concept, which is there are people who talk about um, being taken up, and I'm assuming it's more kind of their consciousness or their astral body or something along those lines, and being put into a clone body on craft. Um, what are your thoughts on that process? And one, like, have you heard of it? Have you experienced it? Or two, do you know how
Yeah.
they do that if they do that?
So, okay, well, if we understand what makes up a hybrid, then we can understand what goes on craft. So, if a person has incarnated into a physical form, such as a human container,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, through the birthing process, and their extraterrestrial nature combines with the spirit nature, and they have symbiotic relationship, yeah, and then when the person is asleep, their extraterrestrial consciousness will move up into the craft and assume a container and be in a container and be an extraterrestrial. And that will be a container that is matched one genetically to that consciousness
Mm-hmm.
that the hybrid mind had previously known itself to be before it became human.
So the person in effect is experiencing their true self.
Their true self, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what about the people though? Because I've also had people say that they are like put into a cloned version of their human body, or it could be like a younger version, or say
Yeah.
someone who is now disabled and in a wheelchair, but they're in their body on craft where they're younger and can walk. Have you heard of that type of situation?
No, not that one specifically, but I've got one that's a bit similar. That is like, if you've ever been, have you been out of body doing astral as an astral?
Who, me
Um,
myself or?
Yeah, have you ever been like?
I don't think so. I think I've more remote viewed than I have
Okay.
astral traveled.
So yeah, so with astraling, when you step out of your body, it's as though you've got exactly the same body.
You feel completely as you do when you're awake.
It's exactly the same as if
Yeah.
you're awake. So, like now, if I step down my body, I could have exactly the same physical features. And so if I was on craft in that form, in an astral or etheric form, then I would see myself, but wouldn't have any limitations physically, because the astral doesn't have those physical limitations.
Okay. And so is that why someone maybe saw themselves like their younger body, like maybe earlier in adulthood versus like as they've gotten older?
Yeah. And another thing is like spirit people. When we get spirit people come and talk to us, they could have passed when they were 80 years old, but now they're showing themselves being 40. And that's not uncommon. We also get guides, a lot of guides that come. They all present themselves as either young children and, or teenagers or whatever, or probably younger adults. You've seen that as well, of course.
Frequently.
You'll also find with physical mediums that a lot of physical mediums have, what's the name of the person that runs the actual sitting?
On spirit side?
Yeah, well, the young person, what would be their name? That they would be orchestrating the sitting.
Like a chairperson?
Yeah, like the chairperson. They're generally older spirits, but they manifest in different ways. When they come through in a physical sitting, they keep the audience amused and in line and in check.
Nice.
That's true.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And this is what I'm saying. A lot of the things that people think is going on, generally, there's a lot of stuff. There's a whole mixture. It's not just spirit or ET. It could be, like you've had a contact with extraterrestrial, and because you've had an increased frequency and your etheric body's shifted, the veil's got a bit thinner, and now, of course, you've got paranormal activity around you. And the more contact you have, the more paranormal activity you have. And next thing you know, you might be seeing spirits or something, or interacting with spirits. And so what started off generally as just one thing, then, there's an evolutionary process where it moves into something else.
Yeah. So do you think that that's just just an energetic type of attraction that is, or is it just kind of that? I mean,
you become elevated in frequency temporarily after you've had extraterrestrial contact, and so it brings you nearer or closer to the frequency of the spirit people, if you like. So it just makes it easier to sense them and see them for 2 or 3 days after, especially. But obviously, if you've got continuous contact, then that's only going to increase as you go along.
You ask some people that have actually been taken what their mental state is about 2 to 3 days, including the day they were taken afterwards, and they'll want to basically hide within themselves. They won't feel like they need to go out into the public, and they won't feel like they want to interact with anybody. What we find when we're talking to a lot of people is people feel really that they want to isolate themselves. They feel very fragile emotionally and psychologically as well. So that's, like there's a lot of signs and symptoms in regards to contact. And you may not even acknowledge or know that you're being taken. There's a lot of people that we talk to, they don't even realize that they're actually having contact at all. But when you start talking to them, they give you 5 or 6 different, trigger points. And, you're not going to just jump in and say, oh, you're having contact. But it's going to ring some alarm bells for you when you're talking to them. And you're going to go, well, okay, well, that sounds like this, Have you ever done one of those experiences surveys, and go through? And some of them are quite interesting, the 60 questions or so.
Yeah. Yeah, I have had that too, where people are telling me things, but they don't. They're like, but I've never had any experiences, and I'm like,
Yeah,
okay,
that's right. And so, it's a bit concerning, isn't it? The amount of people that say they haven't had experiences but have.
Yeah.
And you get to the point where you think to yourself, it's just everybody being taken.
I know. I know. But you know what? That wouldn't be that surprising either, because I think there is a lot more interaction than most people realize, or at least it seems like there is. Like you said, you do talk to so many people that seem to have
Yeah.
no clue. But then there's a part of me that's thinking, well, maybe they kind of suspect it. They're just not ready to admit that to themselves yet. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you were talking though before, I think Cyan, when you were saying, after you kind of have that ET experience, it sort of kind of raises your vibrational frequency a little bit, and so you're more kind of open to it. It reminded me of this kind of really weird experience that I had one time, and it didn't necessarily open me up to it, but it definitely felt like I was in a really weird state after it happened. So I was talking with a friend of mine. She was over in the UK, and I don't consider myself a medium. I have occasionally seen spirits or occasionally heard them in my head, but don't consider myself a medium for sure. And anyways, so I kind of accidentally, I don't know if I would say maybe partially channeling a spirit without even realizing it. And I was saying, I kept saying, I was like, who? And it was this really weird. I was like, I keep hearing the name, like, it was a really weird name in my head, Linz. And she's like, who? And I was just like, it's like Shaza or Shazza or something. I don't know what that means. And she was just like, oh my God, I know exactly who that is. And she was telling me she had a friend of hers who passed away, and that was his nickname. And I was kind of like, okay, that's weird. And so we were chatting like on like Facebook Messenger or something, right? So I was just basically typing in everything that was coming into my head. And she was answering back like, oh my God. And, and I was telling her things that she was just like, how do you know all of these things? Like, how do you know this? She's like, there's no way you should know all of these things. And so afterwards, which is funny because she does talk to spirits, so, but I think she just wasn't used to seeing it coming from me, right?
Yeah.
And so afterwards, like maybe 2 hours later, I had to go pick my kids up from school. And so I was driving, and I just remember feeling really weird. It was almost like my line of vision was like an inch higher than my actual eyes were. It was like I was sitting kind of up higher in my body. If my actual eyes were here, I felt like I was here, and it was really strange. And it was just like a very weird feeling. And it lasted for about a couple of hours, I would say. And it was very bizarre. So I don't know if that's kind of like what you were talking about, but that's what I thought of right away when you said you're kind of like when you raise your vibrational frequency, thinking like it made me think that.
Yeah. Yeah. So when a medium, if you think about mental mediumship, a medium will increase their vibration and will link into a spirit. Spirit people come down in vibration, and then they can lock the medium's mind, give them information and evidence themselves. Yeah. But of course, remember that there's a lot of different types of mediums. And so if you go from sort of a psychic medium to a medium and then a trance medium, and then there's transfiguration mediums and then deep trance mediums, it may be that depending on where you are and how far you've gone down in an altered state, that the residual effect of that for a person could be quite difficult to get past. Generally, when people are developing physical mediumship, when they sit, and if a spirit person is able to use the ectoplasmic life form of the person, then what will take place is the person may be unwell for 2 or 3 days afterwards as well. So it's not unusual at all then for people to get some sort of random contact with spirits. It's just that the disbelief quota is quite high for everybody until you start getting a lot of it and you start evidencing it, and they start to evidence themselves back. And then you realize that it's not that much of a logical leap to actually, believe in spirits or work with spirits or whatever, but it's more about getting past the to me, I say it's about getting past the Schumann frequency. The Schumann frequency is what keeps everything grounded. And anything above the Schumann frequency is an altered state. And of course, when we have contact with extraterrestrials or anybody, they're moved into a higher frequency to do that. And they're moved out of that Schumann frequency. Then, of course, like you had with the feeling you were a bit higher, you were raised vibrationally, and then after a while, it took a few hours for your vibrational field to settle. Yep, so that you felt grounded again.
Yeah. Yeah, it was odd. So is that similar to, so I know you channel ET. Is there a difference when you channel the Zetas versus when you say channel a spirit? Is there a different feeling to it?
Yeah, so we actually don't use the word channel, but I know that in some countries they do,
Mm-hmm.
because the problem with channeling is that you see some people, they just sort of take a breath, and next thing you know, they're just repeating some of the words that's happening. But with trance work, it
Okay.
takes a long time to develop that trance work,
Mm.
and that the spirit people and the ET have to learn how to manage all of your different body functions, heartbeat, breathing, cognitive processes, so that they can actually, like spirit people, they take over. And then, of course, they extrude the ectoplasm from the pancreas
Mm-hmm.
and can, create spiritual physical forms in the room. They can do apportation. They can do all those sorts of things. So there is a big difference, though, between trancing spirit people and actually trancing or mind-to-mind contact with extraterrestrials. And we spend a bit of time talking to people, and a lot more lately, about there's a lot of people that sort of do, say, CE5, and then they'll see a light in the sky, and then they feel like they just want to channel, and they say, well, how do I evidence that? What do I need to do to find out whether the channeling actually is me, my own mind doing that, or is it, is somebody trying to contact me? What evidence do I need to do? And so there's a whole process that people need to go through to work out what's really going on with them, because that's what people want. It's like the whole disclosure effort at this point in time. People are just trying to work out what's the truth. So I think there's so many different facets and avenues to people disclosing to themselves, also disclosing the information they've got to the public. I could hold up a picture and say, this is a picture of a craft, and everybody would go, no, that's just CGI.
Yeah.
Or that's Photoshop. And it wouldn't matter whether when a craft landed, if I had an iPhone and was able to take a photo of the craft and everything, people go, no, it's too blurry, because iPhones take really clear photos these days. Well, I'd say, but that's because of the frequency difference. Even let's say it was a real photo, if people would still not want to believe that it was a real photo.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. So Andy has a question. When you say the spirits come down, where are they coming down from? Is this a dimensional realm or a spirit realm? And what's the difference? Or is this too complex to explain?
No, it's not too complex. So when we say they come down, we don't mean that they come down from heaven or anything like that. Spirit people are all around us, just the same as right now, in this room and around you as well. There's a whole lot of different radio frequencies. If you turn the radio on, you can go through 100 or 1,000 different radio stations. They all exist all around you, but you can't see them or hear them at this point unless you've got a device that tunes into that specific frequency. It's the same as all the telephone networks, cellular networks, all that stuff's going through, but you can't pick up any of it. And so with spirit people, what they do is they move from their frequency into a frequency that they know that the medium can work in, and mediums are trained in defined frequency. And it may be that there's a spirit over here, but you can't see them as a medium, but a different spirit comes in and moves into this frequency, and then the medium's able to interact. And that's why a lot of mediums that are correct mediums will have difficulty in actually tuning into the spirit, because the spirit person also, from their perspective, has to learn how to communicate with the living via frequency as well. So there's a lot to spirit realm's really interesting stuff. I mean, the more you look into it, it's just as interesting as the extraterrestrial stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they don't really come down from anywhere. They're with us all the time.
Yeah, but there was a spirit that stood at the top of the stairs about 3 minutes ago.
Oh, really?
Just have a look, see what we're up to.
You know what? Sometimes when you walk through old buildings, you just, if you can see objectively, which means you can see spirits, you should see the way some of these spirit people are dressed. They're dressed in their normal clothes, in their period sort of clothing, and some of the stuff was amazing, that they wore. And you also see people that have passed over, like, last week with all their modern clothes on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Oh, yeah, that would be really cool to see, actually.
Yeah, it's not initially. Initially, you're really challenged by, if you think extraterrestrial stuff's challenging, so spirit stuff in the beginning, and a lot of people are pretty challenged as it comes through.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, there does seem to be this intertwined energy mixture going on where you'll have contact with extraterrestrials, and then all of a sudden they'll leave, and that next thing you know, you've got this whole spirit thing going on around you, as well as possibly poltergeist activity or telekinetic behavior abilities, all these things.
Wow, that's awesome. So everybody knows, I have it here on scrolling on the bottom, but I pinned the link to join us at the top of the chat. So if you guys have any questions that you want to, oh, thank you, Cassie. I didn't mean to click on that, but thank you. Andy says, thanks. That's even more food for thought. Thanks, guys. So one of the things we talked about, I think it was when I was talking, maybe it was when I was reading the UFO story this morning. You were asking if it was an orb, or we were trying to figure out if it was an orb or like a saucer craft. So let's talk a little bit about orb technology, because I think that's really fascinating as well.
Yeah. Well, I think we've said it before on the show, but generally what you'll see is people will see orbs, and orbs are fairly innocuous. And a lot of people, when they see orbs, they don't feel threatened. They have no fear. They actually, oh, look at that. That's really interesting, And if you see an orb, you'll get up and you'll try and follow it around. And so because of that, and the extraterrestrials know that, what they'll do is that was generally what was when a spirit person was coming through into the physical. There'll be a flash of light and there'll be an orb, and then the orb will move around. And not dust. I mean, you're seeing it with your own eyes. And so then the extraterrestrials went, well, hey, look at that. We can actually mimic the orb process, but create technology inside the orb. And the reason I found this out was because I was sitting inside my house years ago, and I looked outside and I saw this big round orb. It was sort of like a purple violet color sitting on the ground. I went out and it was, it was still there, and I stood beside it, and as I walked, it moved and all the rest of it. And after about, I don't know, probably about 20 steps or so, it just disappeared. And I've often wondered about that, but I've learned over the years that a lot of people, they get scanned by these orbs, and the information's, these are like automated data collection centers, these orbs, right? That's a good way to put it, science is. Yeah. But the thing is then from that, we had a situation probably about 3 weeks ago where we had multiple orbs
3 or 4 weeks ago,
showing outside of the house that you could see visually, just floating around. At some point, though, it's like, oh, there's another orb. Oh, yeah, that's right. There's another orb. And you just keep watching, the TV sort of thing.
They whiz around the room.
They just whiz around the room. I was going to say, but the biggest one I've ever seen was probably about 3/4 of a meter across.
Wow!
And it came into the house, and it lit up the whole room.
Wow! Now, when you see these, are they like? Do they look like they're made out of light, or could they be like metallic? What do they look like, or is it a variety of different things?
Yeah, they're generally translucent, transparent.
I've seen them solid, though.
You've seen them solid?
I've seen them absolutely solid. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the ones outside the back door were solid a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one that flew across the bed just before we travelled, that was translucent.
Okay.
That was about the size of a football.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now, when you say like translucent, like I'm thinking like a bubble. Does it look sort of like a bubble? Would that be the closest thing to compare it to?
Yeah, absolutely.
They literally vary in size. I've seen them the size of a basketball, the size of a football, the size of a tennis ball. I've seen them ping pong ball. They're just always different.
Justin's got a question there about spirits as well.
Yes. They aren't. Yeah, I was trying to figure out. Hopefully I interpreted this right, Justin. So if I didn't, let me know. They aren't
They aren't
always
always
wearing. They
wearing.
passed in. Are they more like what
Yeah,
their most visual image that defines them as a? And then he says,
yeah.
like a work uniform or
Yeah.
something. So I guess he's saying, do they sometimes wear what you would see them in life, like a
They-
work uniform or
They
something?
generally wear, when if a spirit person is trying to make themselves known to you, then they're going to try and look like as you'd remember them. I mean, that seems to be a general rule of thumb. It doesn't mean they're going to look like that all the time, but if you've got somebody who's passed over, really desperately trying to make themselves seen, heard, felt, whatever they can do, they're gonna try and present themselves in a way that you would recognize them.
Yeah, and so let's say that my grandfather comes to Cyan in spirit. He may wear a uniform just for that a split second.
Yeah.
The medium says, "Oh, I can see the spirit person's wearing this uniform," and you go, "Oh, that's right. He used to work for the railway.
He was in the army, or he was in the navy, or
next thing
whatever.
you know, the spirit person switches out of the uniform and is now wearing something else, and sort of showing a different image. They'll just show the images that are required to get the evidence across at that point in time.
Yeah.
Whereas other spirits that are seen objectively, so if, a spirit person just walks through or whatever, depending on where you are, they'll be just dressed in the clothes that they may have passed in, and it's irrelevant to them what you're seeing. Some of them, depending on what year, it'll be a period type clothing that they wear from the 18th century, or early 1900s, for sure.
Cool. So Gabrielle says, or Gabrielle, I'm sorry if I think Gabrielle, right? I'm assuming, I think this is when we were talking about the orbs. I'm going to assume that this is talking about orbs, but if I'm wrong, let me know. Do you ever address them? Would they interact telepathically?
Well, can Gabrielle type in whether she means ET or spirits, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, in a seance environment, sitting with mediums in whatever capacity they're sitting, and you see an orb, it's most likely to be a spirit person. And I always acknowledge an orb if I see an orb in that context. If it's extraterrestrial and it's technology rather than a personality, the orb just generally whizzes off, or unless it's Paul, and they just follow him around.
Yeah. Someone will say, "Why are those orbs with you?" Like, say there's 3 orbs, and I'll just say, "Don't worry about it."
Just another one.
Yeah,
awesome.
What about the one that was following your car? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, this was bizarre. I'm driving down the road, and I looked in my passenger window, and there was this orb, like a bubble had been, and it was just sitting on the outside of the window, and I thought, somebody must have blown a bubble, and it's in the wind. That's logical, right? That you think it was a bubble. And so I accelerated up, and the bubble stayed, and I thought, the wind must be getting stronger. And then next thing I know, the bubble moved around the front of the vehicle and traveled in front of the vehicle. And I thought, that's not a bubble.
Right.
Right, yeah. But, unless you sort of link in with them and find out what they're doing there, see, the difference is can you link in telepathically to technology? That's the difference.
Yeah.
It depends. I don't generally link into technology because it's generally just there to scan. A lot of people that are contacted or abducted or whatever, they have to be monitored as well. Right? And there's a lot of reasons why people are monitored.
True.
Yeah, a lot of reasons.
So Gabriel had a question. Well, not necessarily, excuse me, not a question, but the big orbs, is there a difference, is a big orb more likely to be technology or an entity, or small more likely to be one or the other, or does it just vary depending on who or what they are?
It's really hard.
I was going to say,
see, the problem is the extraterrestrials realize that the living, or the human beings,
accept orbs.
They accept orbs. And so if you've got a spirit orb, and they can create an exact copy of a spirit orb, although it's technology. When you look at it, you just can't tell the difference, right? But the dead giveaway for me is if they come into the house and they're 3/4 of a metre across, they're big,
that was
and they light the whole room up. That's not a spirit, you know what I mean? If they're just rolling around the backyard or whatever, and you can walk up to them, that's not a spirit either. So you know,
we've had orbs in the room at the same time as Zeta beings. So you know, by association, you can pretty much say, well, that's they're up to something. That's their technology.
Generally,
I guess like when you're sitting talking to a spirit person in a séance, and a little orb floats by, you generally know it's going to be a spirit orb. And yes, you could probably link into it if you wanted to.
You could link
absolutely.
Into spirits, sure.
But the sizes, shapes, colours, densities of them, I don't think that means you couldn't just use that alone to define whether it was spirit or extraterrestrial.
Gotcha. Have you ever seen, so I've had this happen a couple times to me, and it was actually in 2 different houses. And both times I was using like the video camera on my phone. One time I was recording my cat. He was playing with something. And then the other time, I think I was taking a picture. And both times it happened, it wasn't super fast. I had time to look in my camera and look up and then look back a couple of times to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing, or there wasn't something there. But it looked like almost like a cotton ball kind of floating through. Have you ever seen anything like that? Like I was like, is that a bug? There wasn't anything that I could see.
I have seen that. I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, I used to have a couple of old photos, click and point, and get developed at the local whatever camera place photos before good old fashioned digital stuff. And I was literally looking for them about a month ago. Can't find them anywhere, but it's exactly what you just described.
That's so funny. I was just looking for the video of my cat and I can't find it.
And it was actually featured my cat as well, those photos. That's really funny.
That's interesting.
That was
no, it was weird. It was like a series, you know, like if you smoke rings, you know, like when people do cigar smoke rings or silly things like that. It was almost like that, but they were made, each individual ring was made of cotton wool or something soft and fluffy. And it was like they were staggered up in almost like a weird tornado shape, but you know, that's a basic way to describe it. But I had a whole series of them, you know, I've obviously gone click, 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 and they were all in slightly different positions. And the cat above the cat, you know.
Yeah, that's so funny. Mine, mine looked literally more like a round kind of cotton ball, but it was that white kind of fluffy, like you're describing, like cotton. And one was with my cat, and then the other one, and I've told this story, I think when I was on Space Out Radio, and everybody kind of freaked out when I said it, but I was helping to put on a conference here in Massachusetts, and I happened to have Travis Walton's suitcase in my house because his suitcase had gotten lost and I was the only like local one. So we told the airline just to deliver. We gave him my address. And so I was trying to take a picture to let Travis know that it was here. And as I was like taking the picture, I saw this like cotton ball kind of thing floating around. And that's where I did a kind of that double take again. What? And took the picture of it. And I had it in the picture as well. Like I said, it wasn't like, you know, or anything like that. It was just kind of like hanging out, like, what you doing? It was so weird. So I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that it was Travis Walton's suitcase, but it's a fun story. So, you know.
I could see a question there from Helen.
Yes. Yeah. So Helen says, some of us seem to have a lot of experience. I think she means experiences, whether it's spirit, ET, etc. Is there something about our vibration or something that attracts them? That's a good one.
Well, there's 2 ways to look at that. If you're you know, when people are first born, you know, children have a wonderful imagination, and then sort of when you hit about 7 or 8, you know, a lot of the friends, the imaginary friends all disappear, these sorts of things. But if that process doesn't ever solidify and the veil become thicker, if we use that sort of terminology, which happens to most people, then you will have a lot of spirit activity around you because you've come from spirit realm. And all you've done is incarnate into the physical form. So all you're seeing is the beings that you knew before you came into the physical. But the opposite applies if you've not come from spirit realm, or part of you has, but you're an extraterrestrial hybrid, then those extraterrestrials will be scanning you using orb technology. They'll be visiting you, contacting you, and in doing so, they'll also weaken the veil between you and spirit realm, and you'll be getting spirit contact as well.
Interesting. Somebody asked earlier, and I meant to put it back up, but you said scanning you. That reminded me. They were asking, what would they scan for? Like, why would they be scanning you?
Look, so the only thing I can say I actually know about the scanning stuff is you've got to understand that the physical body contains cells, and those cells are all vibrating at a specific frequency. Now, if you want to hold some level of consciousness with that physical form, and you're not a spirit person, then you need to be able to align consciousness with the physical cellular structure, the frequency of it. And so quite often they're scanning, looking for distortions between consciousness and physical. And when they're scanning, they're looking to see how well the consciousness is acclimated to the physical form. Mm-hmm. And that's why in the past, a lot of the older abductees have a lot of puncture marks scoop marks and all these sorts of things. And not so much these days, but in the past, the scoop marks were quite big, as big as the ends of your little finger, because they were taking the cellular sample and they were comparing it to the consciousness, the recorded, stored consciousness of the extraterrestrial mind, to see how it's existing correctly in the physical form of a human. And so this is why we see a lot of people get scanned as well.
Interesting.
By orbs, yeah.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Let's see. Pinzer says, I've never seen any kind of orb until recently in front of my face. Fully awake, I was standing. I'm still struggling with what to think. It looked like a soap bubble, but ping pong sized ball. Odd. So, yeah, sounds just like what you guys were describing.
Yeah, I mean, it gets to the point where it's just you see them all the time, and you're like, "G'day." Yeah.
Just let them get on with it.
Yeah, right. It's amazing. Jeff says, I've seen both kinds, amorphous like a cotton ball and solid like an illuminated like ping pong ball. Would that indicate two different origins?
I just really don't think you can use a visual description alone to identify what the origin of it is. I mean, in all the experiences of orbs I've had, I've been in a spirit sitting, a seance. I know it's spirit related, or I've seen the orbs with extraterrestrial beings in the room. I know it's ET related, or, with what's going on around us during the day, and then we see an orb, we know that it's highly likely to be related to what's been going on around us all day long. It's always the association for us that enables us to give any tentative ID as to, what origin it has.
I think the other thing is as well, you imagine, so an extraterrestrial, they want to perform one function, they send one type of orb.
Yeah.
They want to create a crop circle, they send multiple orbs that are pre-programmed to create that crop circle. Not in all cases. We know that many crop circles are created by humans. So trying to distinguish the difference between a spirit orb or an extraterrestrial orbs technology is probably going to be impossible.
Interesting. He says, one was clearly positioned to observe me. It had occupied a position for best overall visibility.
Yeah. And I would suggest that if it's a spirit person, they'll just be passing through, whereas extraterrestrial technology will stay and scan, do what it needs to do, and then leave.
Yeah. Interesting. Pinzer says that makes sense. Cyan, sometimes almost impossible to describe how they look anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No two orbs are the same.
Oh, that's right.
So let's talk a little bit too, unless anybody else has any more orb questions, let's talk a little bit about CE5, because we were talking a little bit about Mr. Stephen Greer this morning in the morning video, and he's kind of well known for CE5s. What are your thoughts on CE5? I'm very curious about this one.
You go.
Deep breath. you know, I know that a lot of people, you know, sort of do see 5, but I mean, I've had a couple of different experiences with craft and contact, and sometimes you just are in the right framework, you know, mindset, and next thing you know, there's a craft flashing, you know, up in the sky. Other times you've got to work really hard to get into that mindset to create the right conditions. But then I've come to the point where I'm starting to think to myself, I'm wondering if a lot of the stuff that people are seeing is they're creating it via consciousness. And so for me, it's more about, if it's not somebody throwing, you know, flares out of a plane or a lot of other stuff, then the thing is you've got to ask yourself, what. I like it when things fail. That's the first thing. So if you do see 5 and it fails and nothing happens, then you go, well, that's great, because we weren't able to create something. If you then do the same process again with the same people, and with the same music, the same meditation, and something happens, then you've got some sort of validation, because it's like a scientific method for creating evidence for yourself. Whereas if every time you go out and you perform some sort of CE5 protocol, and next thing you're seeing lights everywhere,
every time,
I'm just wondering, who's creating the phenomenon? Is it, you know, the consciousness of the human creating the phenomenon, or is it actually something really going on? That's why I just don't know about the whole CE5 stuff. I know a lot of people do it. A lot of people spend a lot of time doing it as well. I may have in the beginning done it a few times, but then I just decided not to bother.
I think for us, it's with C5. I mean, it's awesome to have craft, you know, flash in the sky. We do see it fairly regularly, don't we? When we've
had it happen. Yeah.
But I guess the problem is that you can't identify the race. You can't see the craft. You know, it's. What do you do with that? It's like, okay, there's a light flashing in the sky. Now what?
Now what?
Like, where do you go with that? Like, you know, it's I don't know. That's
it's definitely an issue, because you know, like, obviously people do want contact. And that's why, you know, like on your show this morning, we were people were talking about disclosure. And you know, you were talking about Lou Elizondo and Stephen Greer and all the rest of it. And you know, people are sort of generally thinking about disclosure. We noticed on social media that there's a lot of discussion about it, but the problem is with disclosure is that you've got a whole lot of people talking about it. And so firstly, you've got contactees and experiencers talking about it, and if those people have been abducted or contacted, then they've got a completely different perspective of what contact is. Right? That's the first one. Then we've got a whole lot of people that work for different agencies, whatever, that talk about contact, but they can't disclose anything, as you know, you were talking about NDEs and non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. And then, you know, what are they actually saying? This is the thing, like sort of throwing stuff out there, you know. And to me, I started to notice that it's more about just keeping people interested. Yeah. And, you know, next week we've got something, or there's something coming up next week. We're going to disclose something
big
next
announcement.
week. Big announcement next week. Well, for people on the other end of the scale that have already got contact with extraterrestrials, we're not interested in all that. We just don't care. I don't care about people disclosing and all this. And, you know, the latest picture comes out, or the Tic Tac or whatever, because your whole life's been based around contact with these beings. And the conversation really needs to be is, look, there's enough evidence out there already, for most people anyway. And if that's enough, then where's the conversation? What is true disclosure? And what does that mean? What will we accept as disclosure? Where is the conversation about, well, what does humanity look like once it's actually got past the disclosure? Where do we go then with that? And the biggest question that people have to ask themselves is, what happens with all the people that say they've been abducted? Today's come, we had disclosure yesterday, and now the penny's dropped and everyone's going, well, people have been saying there's reptilians, negative entities. People are saying that there's these greys. People are saying this being, that being, whatever. We know that all these ET exist. Somebody said that they all exist, from that we all believe for whatever reason. What do we do now with all the people that say they've been taken? All the stuff that's related to my lab. What does that actually mean? I think that's where the conversations are. But when you look on social media, all you're seeing is, people want to collect followers. They want to get information. And they keep sort of hooking people along. And it's just, I just don't follow any of it, because I started looking at a bit of it and I thought, oh, this is just a waste of time.
Yeah. And I find too, and I don't know if you've encountered this, that there are, so I think, ufologists and experiencers are, even though talking about the same sort of phenomena, two different sides to the coin, right? We're approaching it from two very different perspectives.
Yeah.
But the experiencers, even within kind of the experiencer camp, I find two sides to that as well. You have the experiencers who, like you guys are talking, and I tend to fall into that same camp too, which is like, I don't really care about disclosure. Like, I don't necessarily need that to validate like my own experiences. But then there are those experiencers that are almost angry that the government isn't listening to the experiencers or taking into account the experiencers. And they'll often come to me and just be like, well, when are they going to listen to the experiencers? When are they going to take us into account? I'm like, they're never going to take you into account, because they'd have to actually admit, as you said, what about the people that are being abducted? There's a lot of questions they're not going to want to answer, especially if they knew about all of this stuff. So,
but what if they are learning from the experiences? You see, this is the most interesting thing. What if they are watching and monitoring and learning, because they don't have the answers themselves? It'd be like you worked at Area 51 or wherever, and a craft crashes, and you're an engineer and you manage to get this thing sort of up and running, but you can't do anything with it. And next thing you know, you hear about all these people that are being taken by these beings that were supposedly, at Roswell or wherever. And so you start monitoring their behavior and what they're doing, because you know that you can't learn much more about the craft by back engineering it, because you don't have the specific technological information that's required to understand how to back engineer it. So you start watching the experiences to see if you can somehow link back into the beings who bought the craft originally.
I agree with you. But the problem is, a lot of the MyLab experiences, which for people that don't know what that is, military abductions, a lot of that is to find out what happened when they were abducted or contacted, however you want to look at it, by these ET races. They're trying to get that information, but they're going about it by making it seem like you might be having more ET experiences, but it's actually your own government or your own military that are kind of perpetrating these abductions. Are they ever going to admit to that? I don't think they would, unless they absolutely.
Well, how do they tell me? Because we don't deal much with the MyLab stuff in Australia. So how are they supposed to be getting information by giving you more contacts that aren't real?
So basically, this is what I've heard from other people that have had very conscious recall of these experiences, because they do work with some ET races. And those ET races have helped them to develop or taught them technologies, basically to implant screen memories. And so what they will do is they will abduct these people, somehow scan their memories. I'm assuming this is also ET tech. And then implant a screen memory that it was an ET race, so maybe the Zetas. And I think this is probably a part of where they get a lot of their bad rap, that abducted them and did these tests on them. And so they have no idea that it was even the military doing it in the first place, until sometimes these memories do start, sometimes the memories do start bleeding through. And that's how we know about it. Or the people that are, for whatever reason, the screen memories didn't work well on them. I don't know the particular tech myself, so I can't speak to that aspect of it. But this is what a lot of people have reported to me, is what has happened.
it's a bit of a roundabout way to get information.
Seems
It
very
is, but if you
captivating.
think about it, so when I was talking with the Zeta, and this is like the thing that, you know, with you guys, and I don't know if you remember this, and this was part of what I put in my presentation. I'm wondering if I have it on hand nearby. But one of the things that they said was basically when there's confusion, they're trying to figure out who you are and what you know about other ET races. And I took that as to mean that was in reference to a lot of my lab experiences. It could be other extraterrestrial races that are doing that as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it sounded very similar to what a lot of people report their my lab experiences to be like.
Mm.
I don't know. But you got to remember, humans aren't going to be as advanced in their technology as ETs are. So even if they're working with certain ET races, we don't know how advanced those ET races are. So they're kind of like, you know, doing it like with a Band-Aid as opposed to this like technology that a lot of these other races have. They're trying to kind of just like fumble their way through it in comparison.
Yeah. There's a few questions I've seen fly up the screen as well.
Justin saying both parties are having a learning experience. Yeah. Diesel Girl says, do the Zetas want to see an Earth where they live amongst us?
Not really. I mean, they have, imagine yourself, you come in a craft, you're looking at what's going on planet.
Yeah.
You're like, as you say, right, wind the windows up, kids. We're going through the bad neighborhood. It's just no.
I don't blame them. I wouldn't either. Would not either. Justin says, what would they do with a Tic Tac UFO if they caught up with one? Where do you start? I'm not sure if he's talking about like the humans.
Yeah. I don't think they could.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, if you're handed technology and you don't know what it is, what's the chance of you either breaking it, causing yourself an issue with the technology, or just never understanding it? That's one of the issues. Yeah. Where do you start? That's a good question.
Yeah. Mike makes a good point. I feel like if the military was going to treat them like invaders, we would have already had a war. Well, I think the military probably realizes they have no chance.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about, you know, the false flag stuff and all the rest of it. I mean, to really believe that, you know, you'd be seeing extraterrestrials, you know, fighting a war against, you know, humans, it's a bit. I just have a lot of problems believing that people could even fall for that. I know that it's possible, but I don't know. I suppose it's a pretty crazy time at the moment, but maybe anything's possible.
Yeah. I'm just going to put this link in here one more time, just in case anybody wants to come on. Wait, did I actually put that in there? Yes, I did. Okay. Let me just make sure. I think that was all of the questions so far. Let me go back just a tad. Praise. I think that, oh, that's weird. I heard myself like echo. Okay. I think that's everything. I think we've caught up with the questions.
There's a question there from Shelley.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Lynn, do your guests have a theory of what the others are looking for? I still think my opinion from my experiences, we have it, and by no means should they get a hold of it.
Who are the others?
Well, I guess that's the science question, is who are the others?
Yeah. Yeah. Are the others the ET or the others the humans? Yeah, I'm curious too. All right, so we're waiting for Shelley to respond. So Shelley, if you can just clarify, that would be great. So Paul, in your experience, they're mostly well-meaning or trying not to cause undue harms?
Not the Zetas.
Okay, so, you know, like, I think that when we say, you know, races and beings or those sorts of things, we need to understand that there's, you know, I mean, what's that theory? Is it the Drake equation that talks about how many possible races exist out there? We only ever talk about the Zetas because we know from dealing with some of the other races what their behaviours are like. So the Anunnaki, for us, they've been fine. We've had no problems. Reptilians, no, not so much. It hasn't been, for us, it hasn't been that positive, but it hasn't been that negative either, I just want to say. So it just means that sometimes they're just a little bit pushy in the way that they act. Alpha Centauri beings, I don't want anything to do with them for various reasons. Arcturian beings seem to be fine. There's a race called the Stilt that we have no problems with as well.
The avians.
The avians, which are really lovely, they're quite good as well. The Honorians are really good. There's the Orel, which you guys, people will never have heard of. They're really very lovely.
And then you have races that are completely neutral.
And there's the Trillians are completely neutral races. Then you've got some mantis races that they're quite loving. And so, say 75 to 80% of the races that we've come across over the years, they've been fine. Yeah, they've done some strange things. Don't get me wrong. We've seen a being, like to remove somebody's eye in an operation, and then put it back. I don't know what they were looking for. I think they were doing some surgery or something. But the thing is that when you see these things, you have to trust that from a technological perspective, they know what they're actually doing. They're not just taking the eye out and going, "Oh, look at that," putting it back in.
Interesting.
That was the reason.
Justin asks about the
Yeah, it could be a cultural thing with the reptilian Draco, you think? I'm not sure what he's referring to with a cultural thing.
If Justin could actually sort of expand on that question a bit, that'd be good.
So while we're waiting for Justin to do that, Big J21, are the Greys vessels for the reptilians?
No. The thing about the reptilians is that their technology is pretty backwards, and quite often you'll see them that they're working with the Greys or the Grey species. They're actually being trained by a lot of the Greys. So I've seen them being trained. They're also used in training humans as well. There's a lot to the reptilian races, actually, that they've sort of infiltrated, as David Icke says, a lot of different frequency, consciousness. They do manipulate a lot of people through their behaviours, those sorts of things.
He says that, yeah.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
I'm not a huge David Icke fan.
no, neither am I. But from our own, if you ask Cyan and me, you could do a whole show on this. But if you ask us about our contact with them, we've seen that generally they're not as I said, the most aggressive type beings that I've ever come across, but they're also not the most loving either. So, you've just got to take each race as they come, and the individual entity with that race. So you'll never hear me say, "Oh no, all those beings, they're just sort of whatever." Although I did say before about the Alpha Centauri, but that was me. I said I don't want to work with them. That's like people saying, "Oh, the Orion beings, they're fantastic." Well, that's what that person's opinion may be, but it's not mine. And just because it's not mine doesn't mean that you can't work with them. That's just whatever you want to do. Really. People do whatever they want.
I agree. And I think that's what it sounds like Justin was saying too, being pushy and aggressive.
I don't think it's them just being pushy and aggressive either. See, this is the thing. I'll give you an example. So a friend of mine, William Trinit, he wrote some of the books that we've worked on together, Primer of the Zeta Race. He was given an image to look at, and I said to William, "Be careful of that image. I think there's some sort of something behind it." And I didn't mean something really sinister. But what we noticed was that every time you looked at the image, it seemed to bring some sort of energy around you, right? And so I told him, "You need to take that sort of away, that image off, wherever." And a few people had looked at the image and said that they felt strange after that. Well, we live up in an area where people, there's a lot of artists and stuff. And someone was telling me that when they do create, they put their whole intention into the image. And that's lovely, lots of love and kindness and compassion. But we sort of thought that sometimes some beings, whether they know it or not, they insert their energy into imagery, and then when a human sees that imagery, that it then affects the human. I think that's what happens a lot with the reptilian stuff. I'm not sure whether it's intentional, but it definitely does happen. And there is a lot to this. And I know that some people take everything to the extreme. We don't do that.
Yeah. And there is a lot of fear mongering around them.
Yeah.
And they are, definitely, I guess one could say like a scarier looking race, right? And you hear horror stories about them. So I think that they've almost become this like legend, as opposed to the reality, which is like you said, you can't sit here and say that all of one race is good or all of one race is bad. They're all individuals.
Yeah.
So I agree. All right. So Andy has a question. Do all of the ET races interfere or interact with the human race for different reasons or purposes?
Do all of the ET races interact with human races for different? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, say the Zetas are interacting with the humans because some of the percentage of the humans are actually from that race. Whereas other beings that have incarnated, say Sirius A, which are the avian or feline as well, they've incarnated as well, but they're not actually performing the specific function. So, say the Zeta race, you'll find that a lot of the hybrids for that race are basically technical people. They might work in IT or teaching or maps or weather or something, but they work in specific technical areas. Whereas another race will work in a different type of industry as a human. And you'll see that there's a commonality amongst those hybrids from those specific races, that they work in specific areas of humanity as well.
Sorry, I was just trying to answer someone.
No, that's okay, yeah.
Okay. Oh, Justin was saying, thanks, Paul and Cyan, I'm leaving. The question's for others now. Thanks so much.
Oh, that's okay, Justin.
Sure. And let's see. Oh, yeah. And yes, he says, yes, we can be quick to judge and get the wrong opinion. Absolutely. Mike, I was trying to type this in. Or am I making something out of nothing? I'm not sure what you were referring to. I was trying to go back. If you're talking about the link, I did put that in there. I can do it one more time. But if there was something else that I missed, please let me know. But here's the link again one more time in case anybody wants to. We have a few minutes left. So let's see. Here we go. Big J21. Is there a difference from a reptilian with wings and the lizard people with tails?
I've never met them. No idea. But if they're different physically, they might be different psychologically. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I can say just from the ones that I've encountered, at least within the Draco reptilians, some of it is hierarchical from my understanding. So the higher up they are, the kind of like the bigger the wings are. And I don't know why that is. And the tails as well, because they do have a very hierarchical structure from what I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some interactions with them when I've been astraling as well. So there are plenty of reptilian activity in the astral realms. They do seem to work on some sort of a militaristic type methodology as well. Yeah. That's really all I'm going to say at this point.
Yes, I will agree. Oh, good, Justin. I'm glad you're enjoying it. You've had some great questions. Let's see. Okay, good, Andy. It wasn't just me. Okay. Okay. I think we are. Helen, it's sad to say. Okay, just making sure. Justin. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad that we can all agree that we can be too judgmental. We have such a good audience here. Open minds. What is this? Open minds data, fresh eyes and ears. Mate.
Did you see that Nino said to Andy, yes, some walk in and take over, some befriend generation after generation? Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm happy for a breakfast smoothie drink, so I've been told. Well, you know, even if they do, does that make them bad? I'm going to say from our perspective, it's probably not great, but we eat animals. Is it any different? You know?
I know. I'm looking at the comment that says, yes, some walk in.
Oh,
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
and take over. We
We've
know
seen that.
people that are walk-ins.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
I wonder if they meant like they walk in and just take over the planet. That's what I wasn't sure if that's what Nita meant.
Oh, I see.
We would be likening that to consciousness. So walk in
Yes.
and take over.
Yeah.
Yes. Do we want to? So we've got a few minutes left. Do we want to like address walk-ins since we have a few more minutes? Unless somebody else has a.
Oh boy.
That's a big
I would suggest that from what we've seen with walk-ins is that at some point, so a person's born, they come from spirit realm, and at some point something happens and the spirit portion leaves the person and then another being steps in. And we've seen that with people. And the person has no memory of what happened prior to that day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very curious to see that take place and speak to the people that it's happened to. But it is what it is. I've got no evidence to say it's not true. So
I think there's a new show on. I want to say it's maybe on Apple TV. It's newish. It's new for me because I haven't watched it yet. I just saw the preview not that long ago. And I think it's about that very concept. Like it almost seems like the preview was this guy, I don't know who came and told him, but somehow he was informed that he was going to be moving on and there was going to be a walk-in coming into his body. And so he only had so much time left with his family. I'm gonna have to watch it though because it looked really interesting. If that's what it's about, I thought that was a really interesting concept that they would make a TV show out of that.
Well, it's if you've seen it happen, it's just a bizarre process. But there are a lot of people that say that they're walk-ins. I mean, this is the thing. It's not up to us or anybody to say no, you're not.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
true.
Okay, great. Can you give me any information about that? Does it? How did that happen? To try to get some information, evidence, about that, or talk to somebody from their family. Have you seen, some sort of personality change with the person?
Yeah.
And was it a psychological issue? Or was it actually something else?
Yeah, I think that would be so hard to evidence though, because there could be so many factors, like you guys know too as counselors, like so many factors that could change someone's personality. That would be a really tough one to evidence, I would think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a Mary Rodwell advocate. Yes, we love Mary. You need the name of that show. Okay, Andy, I'll see if I can find it for you. I'll look at it afterwards and see if I can find the show. Yeah, it looks really cool. All right, so we are almost out of time. Is there anything you want to end with? Any last tidbits you want people to think about until next week? Leave them with anything?
Don't buy into the hype.
I like that one. Yes.
Yeah, listen, seriously. I think at this point some of the energy around a lot of people is quite frenetic.
Yes.
And if you've been around a long time, people need to just step back and chill out, and smell the roses, watch the ocean, all that sort of stuff. Because if your head's always in this stuff, you can lose perspective, and you won't be staying grounded at all.
Yep, absolutely. I love it, and I will piggyback on Paul and Cyan's advice and say, think for yourself. Don't believe anything anybody tells you. Do your research. Come to your own conclusions.
Seek your own evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So take a step back and think. See, we work well together.
And breathe.
Yes, breathe. And breathe. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, audience, for all of your wonderful questions. They had some really good questions today.
Good,
really good questions
really
today.
Awesome. So we will be back here again next Wednesday, right? So how much longer are you guys in the UK? When do you head back to Australia?
No. Where are we going next?
Well, we're going to France tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Morning.
Okay.
So we'll be in France when we speak to you next.
Getting closer to the European area.
Wow.
Be in the
Exciting. My goodness. I'm going to have to live vicariously through you guys. How exciting. Awesome. I love it. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a great week. Safe travels to France then. Not too far from where you guys are, right?
No, it's an hour in the plane.
Throw a rock.
Take off, have a cup of tea, land. Job done.
Best kind of traveling. Awesome. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you so much. Thank you all, everyone. Oh, I know everybody's enjoyed the show here tonight. I can see all of the. Oh, Data's going to watch it over again. Nice. Nice. Well, they have a lot of great information, and they will be back here next Wednesday. So you can talk with them again. So think of some more questions, guys, for next week. All right.
Then.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. See you later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. I will be right back here in the morning at 8 a.m. to go over all of the podcasts for the day, as well as just say hi and chat, whatever we want to talk about, right? So thank you to Paul and Cyan again for joining me here tonight and bringing their always incredible and unique perspective. And if you enjoyed the show, please consider joining the rebellion by hitting that subscribe button. Don't forget to ring the bell. Thank you again, everyone. And I hope you have a great evening. And I will see you tomorrow morning. All right. Bye-bye, guys.